Welcome to part 2 of my series on how to make a steam locomotive for trains rail sim in Gmax, and the subject of what I'm going to make, the model, is the Ballymena and Larne narrow gauge railway 3-foot gauge railway 260 ST built in 1880, and this was built by Bayer Peacock, who always had a sort of a nifty way with the sort of a more obscure end of the railway building market. And this locomotive, which operated between Ballymena and Larne in the northeast of Ireland, the railway eventually became part of the Northern Counties Railway, Belfast and Northern Counties Railway, and then that was then taken over by the Midland Railway of England, and it became the MR(NCC), Northern Counties Committee. And there was a little narrow gauge network that ran out from Ballymena eastwards, and south eastwards, up to Cushendall Way. Didn't quite make it there, got as far as Parkmore or Retreat, and south eastwards from Ballymena down to across the glens down through to Larne. And it had the distinction of running the only Irish narrow gauge boat train ever to operate. So in making this model, it's going to add to my range of Irish 3-foot gauge locomotives, steam locomotives, and many other vehicles and carriages and so on. And but it's a loco I've had on the stocks, as it were, for some time. Now, what I would stress is that research is essential. Provide yourself with as much information as you can, and certainly as many photographs and diagrams as possible. And for this one, I've just got the one photograph, which is I've found in Patterson's History, the Ballymena line, so that's going to be a good guide I shall be using. Okay, so this is where we left it at the end of the first video, just with the diagrams in for the locomotive, and I'm going to make sure that that's on texture correction. You can see there, it immediately renders it correctly. And also please note that I've already saved the file twice, in fact. Ballymena and Larne Railway number 5, here we are, top left, version 1, and this is the second copy. So I've got V1 space 1 and V1 space 2, and I'm going to save these pretty frequently. Now, I tend to start with the wheels, but this time I'm going to start a bit differently. I'm actually going to start with the saddle tank, because it's an unusual shape. It's not one of the standard primitives that we use so much, but I think it would be useful just to see how that is created, and I'm going to use that as my starting point. Now remember, I'm not going to make any materials at this stage. I'm not going to worry about how they're going to look, so it's going to be all those sort of bubblegum colours that you get as you generate the meshes. So here we go, let's not hang about, let's have a look and see what we've got, see if we can find in this view. So we'll have a look from the back. Here we are, there it is, and let's enlarge it and make sure texture correction is on. There we are, slight change there, and that's the saddle tank there that you can see all the rivets. I'm not a rivet counter, so if I can approximate those with the final material, all well and good. For this I will use standard primitives, but I'm going to use splines up here, top left, and I'm going to start by making a rectangle that covers, this is just my own approach, but it's just going to cover more or less the area that I need. Now you can see, although I've made it, what you can't do is see the spline, because the spline has been created back on the 0x 0y coordinate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this one back behind it. Whoops, that wasn't very clever. Undo, move, and I think it's on the y-axis. Remember, I'm just going to record these videos just as I do them. I'm not going to sort of try and edit them or anything like that. So some of them are going to be quite long and maybe quite tedious, but that's just the way it goes. And let's select the spline and give it a better colour so we can see it. Make it nice and bold, make it red. There we are. So that's all very well. That's a spline that more or less covers the whole of the saddle tank. Let's just make sure that we center, because all of these locomotives, the main parts are all bilaterally symmetrical, which means if you cut them in half that way, then that one's a reflection of that one. Of course there are extra pieces on one side and less on the other than that, but mainly that's what you're looking at, bilateral symmetry. So that's us given us a spline there, rectangular. Let's convert that to an editable spline straight away, and let's bring in another spline. Let's bring in a circle, and I'm using the box here. I don't really know why, but now what I want to do is move this. Let's see, we'll take it down to there. You can see perhaps where I'm going with this already. I'm going to make the corners. So obviously that's way too big. So let's go back up to the circle and reduce its radius to about 8 inches. That's 0 for 8 inches. Take it right down and zoom in a bit. And you can see the way this drawing, with the best will in the world, you're not going to get a very detailed image from the drawing. And although you can, that's probably most accurate, that box is a little bit too big, I think. So we can just reduce that a little. Well, it's an editable spline now, so we'll come back to that. Now this curve here isn't quite a quadrant of a circle, so let's convert that to a spline, and let's have a look at the segments, and let's get rid of the segments we don't want. Okay, and let's make it in a brighter colour, make it yellow, so you can actually see the thing. So what we now need to do is to edit these, each of the points, vertices, and we're basically teasing out. The other way, isn't it? Basically teasing out to get that sort of finish. Okay, doesn't look too bad. Quite happy with that. Let's just make sure we got it centered and aligned to the world. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone it, and I'm going to rotate it vertically. I'll rotate it, yes it will, and I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. I've been watching this down here, bottom right, and I'm then going to it's 2 foot 7 and 0.327 inches there, so I'm just going to put the minus in front of that, and that will give me the one over here. Remember, we're talking about bilateral symmetry, and clearly it's not on the same line as this one, but it is in the correct place. Just double check that. 27327, and this one 27327. Okay, plus and minus. It's plus over this side of the x-axis and minus over the right of the x-axis. Now let's just tidy up our box. What we're going to do with this is we've got edges for spline, we've got vertices, so we're going to edit the vertices and we're going to refine them. Refine allows you to add more vertices. So just about where the yellow line ends, I'll stick a vertex in there, and over here as well. And you can see actually that red line is both above the yellow and it's also too far over here. So we're going to sort that, but now in good time. So now we go over to segment and make sure we're not refining it. We'll take out that segment because we don't need it. And we'll take out this segment because we don't need that one either, and we've got this segment here, so we can highlight that. And I think what we can do is then in the y-axis is we can just drop that down. Okay, then we'll edit this vertex in the x-axis to join it up. And if you're already proficient in Gmax, you're probably thinking, why is he mucking about like this? It's just the way I do it. Now, so we've got the beginning, and you can see that that a fair bit of the rest of the square box is going to be pretty unnecessary. Well, maybe, we'll see. I'm going to continue working from this side and just copying it over to this side. Now what I'm never going to use is the mirror command, because that blows the brains of trains when you export into trains. Anything that's mirrored is frankly all over the place. So I think I can probably get away by doing a curve there, bring it in there. So what I don't need is on this editable spline, I don't need that vertex. I don't need that vertex. Remember, it's still there, and I don't need this vertex here. So if we just look in wireframe, you see where I am, and that's the base of the base of the saddle tank. So my next step is to, in the splines, I'm going to draw another circle using the centre line as a start point, and go out more or less to where I want. Give it another colour which I can actually see. Okay, and it doesn't really matter what the colours are at this stage. And now I'm going to move the whole of that circle. Let's just make sure, see where we are with regard to the wireframe. Use wireframe view. I tend to switch it back and forth between those quite a bit. So if I drop it down to there, what I want is for it to marry up each side, and we're at 3'2", 0.214. So I'll take out the 214 and see if that makes it. Needs to be a little more than that, I think. Let's have another look in. Yeah, also needs to go off a bit. You see, that's where the vertex point is going to be. So I'm going to take it down to 3'1.9". It's probably going to be too much. Yes. So 9.5. Push it back. There we go. And I'm going to now convert that to a spline and take out that segment. Let's zoom out. You're beginning to see it. There we are. Look, it's beginning to look like it, isn't it? And let's just have a look on smooth and highlights. Okay, so it looks okay, more or less. I mean, we know it's going to be, it does look like a saddle tank now, but it needs a bit of editing. So this vertex here, we'll immediately drop that down to the correct height, which is, you can judge from there, and we're not far out at all. Look. Remember, it's this curve that we're watching, and we're going to copy it with there. If need be, we'll delete that bit and copy that one over. So at this point now, what I need to do is to edit the amount of curve and pull it down a bit, not to be too crazy. There we are. I wonder if I can just do that on the other side by eye. One of the things that I find a bit irritating is that you can't, once you've got that, you've got to sort of judge this now. That disappears, of course, because you're not selecting as soon as you select this other point, so you've got to bring it down by eye. If I've been really pernickety, what I could do is delete this segment here, copy what, let's do that. Just take that one out, go back here, got the whole spline, make sure it's centered to the world, and we'll clone it. Okay, and then we're just going to rotate it 180 degrees. Make sure it's 180. Anything else will not do. And then we put find out where it is. It's 78.786 inches. So we're going to jump it over there. So it looks fine there, but here, look, we've got a bit of a mismatch. So what I'm going to do here is very cheap, basically. Pick up this one, that's the one on the left. Pick up that vertex and tell it to go to 0. So it moves left. And on this one, go to the vertex and tell it to go to 0. There we are. Okay, right, now let's have a look in wireframe. That's our saddle tank, but it's not really, is it? It's just a series of segments. So now we've got to join them together. Let's join it with that one and with that one, and whenever that cursor changes to that funny little thing with, I don't know what it is actually. Oh yeah, it's joining one circle to 3 others. Oh, I never realised that. So that's okay. So that's all, but it's not actually. It's attached, but it's not joined. So what we've got to do is we've got to weld those vertices together, because we've got two there, two there, two there, two there, two there. You can actually see they're stacked up there. If we were to zoom in here, I think you can see that a bit clearer. If I was just to move that a bit, there, I'll let you see they're still separated. So I won't do that. So pick up both of those down here on vertices, and we're looking at weld. And because we're only looking at the ones we've selected, we can weld those. The tolerances don't really matter. Tolerance there, but normally I would reduce that right down. Oops, that's the wrong one, isn't it? Need to do that. Weld is what we want. There you go. And you see that one there. You see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 handles there. 4 handles. 4 candles. There you go. And 4 there. So we'll weld those together. And weld those together. Okay, so now we've got a single spline, and we'll make sure it's centered. And it should center on 0. Yeah, there we are. Look, so we know we're 0. Let's have a look at it. So there it is, in blue, and it's in front of our diagram. So now what we're going to do is use the extrude function. And it's immediately made it solid. In fact, it's made it in 3 dimensions, but it's got no depth. Although it has a face on each side. Okay, so we're going to extrude that. I don't know how long that is. What is it? About 8 foot, maybe. Now we go drop down to our side view. And the reason why I've chosen this one as the first bit to do is that make sure you've got it rather than the drawing behind. Undo. So I'll try and move it in the wrong axis. Yeah, and it's making it 8 foot from that point out, so it's actually needs to be about 9 foot. I've got Patterson's book here with the details, but I don't think it shows me the length of shows the length of the boiler, but not of the saddle tank. And boiler's 9'2". This is obviously longer than that. Let's try 9'6". Does that look right? Oh no, that's a bit too much. Let's try 9'4". Don't tell me it's the same length as the boiler. No, not quite. It's going to be 9'3", isn't it? I don't know. Yeah, no. 9'3". Let's try that. And that looks about right. I think that's the edge there. Look, you can see. So so now what we've got is we've got the saddle tank. We've got the beginnings of our locomotive. So the next thing we can do here is, if we have a look at the photograph, yeah, the boiler is virtually entirely hidden, but the smoke box is a separate piece anyway. Well, I don't think I'm going to chance it. I think I am going to model the boiler as well. I should point out here that the saddle tank is bound to be quite a high poly, 122, 118 rather, 112 there. That's it. And the other 6 polygons are accounted for by the diagrams. So there's the saddle tank. It looks like the frame comes right up to here. I think there is a little bit of boiler showing there. So because of that, I might as well model the whole boiler, because if you're going to model a little bit like that, it's got to come back into the interior anyway, where you've got the smoke box door. So off we go, we'll model the boiler. So first thing I'm going to do is first thing I'm going to do is save what I've done. Keep doing that, and then save it as, and then you can see here I've got 2 files, so that's the wrong ones. Those are others that I've done, and there it is. Look, that's the one that I've just saved, and I'm going to save it as that one as well. There we are. And so my next step is I'm going to hide that. So we can just hide it. It's still there, but it's hidden. And I'm just going to knock up the boiler, which is a simple cylinder, nothing much complicated about that. And so it's going to run into the cab to about there. That's about the height of it. That looks like the boiler casing there. See on the photograph. It's difficult to see actually on the photograph. No, I don't think there's anything in there. Have another look. I've got the book in front of me now. No, I can't. Doesn't look like there is anything there to show for the boiler itself. That is actually appears to be pipe work, and that's surely sitting on the boiler. Safety valve, surely. Yes. Okay, so we'll go with that, and we're going to estimate that it's sort of like from that line there down to about that line there. So let's do a normal standard primitive. Get a cylinder. I think it draws from the middle, doesn't it? So we'll just draw one and go back a bit, and now we'll try and get the right size. So we come up to here and try and get. We don't need 5 segments. I've left it as 18 size. That's probably more than I need, but we'll go with that for the moment. The radius is way over at the moment. Let's try it at 1'6". Surely the boiler had a greater radius than 3 feet. So we'll drop it down a bit. About the right. I mean, the boiler, the firebox will be bigger, of course, but the boiler itself doesn't look like it was much of a particularly large. This appears to be part of the frame down here in the photograph, and that would be in keeping with that type of locomotive. So if we go back here, and in the perspective view, sure we've got, yes, we're okay, we've got texture correction on. Well, first of all, let's center the pivot so we know where we are, and I think we need a Z-axis, and we just spin it around 90 degrees, get the correct orientation, and then we'll just try and center it on the 0 axis there. We're about right on the height, but let's move this one. Oops, wrong way. Always the wrong way. I think the smoke box door is probably the actual size of the boiler. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to increase it and lower it fractionally. So that's, with all of these, unless you've got really detailed plans, there's a lot of this sort of fiddling about trying to get it just right. That's the one we want. So it's 1'6". So let's go to 1'9". A bit big. 1'8". And I think the Z-axis, drop it down. What we want to do, yeah, I think we're about there. Let's have a look on here. Down here. See, I'm just concerned to get the diameter correct first, and I'll get the length sorted out in due course. That looks about good. That's where I'm working to, that level line there. That's because that's where it looks like the safety valve is mounted on top. Okay, so we'll let it stick into the cab. I'm not sure how far that was, but we'll give it a wave the size of those there. I know it's slightly below the window, but it is there, so I'm going to live with that. It looks like it should be about here, doesn't it? So those controls would normally be on the end of the boiler there, with the firebox. Right, anyway, I'll leave it there. And the height, or the length as it were, here is 6'5", 6'1". It needs to be a fair bit longer than that altogether to create the impression of the firebox plus the boiler, and I'm going to use that sticking into the cab and add maybe a bit to it, but we can always trim it back if need be. So let's make it 12 foot long anyway, and that's going to go to there. Let's go to 14. I can't believe it was 14 feet long, but there you are. We'll leave it at that at the moment because it at least gives us the correct position for the correct diameter of the boiler, and we're going to unhide all. So there's our saddle tank sitting on top. You can see that, and there's a bit of the boiler showing, which I always like to, even though there's nothing actually showing there. I think I'm going to leave a little bit of it there, because if I'm spending those polys on making a boiler to project this in, I'm going to want to show a bit of detail at that end. So let me have a look on the, I think on the photograph it does look like there's a little bit of a projection there of the boiler projecting beyond the saddle tank. Now you notice I'm still working above the frame at the moment, the framework and all the wheels. I will come on to them, but I'm going to do a couple of other, well, I'm going to do one other aspect in this tutorial, and it's perhaps one of the most awkward, and it's the dome. And the chimney also has a similar problem like this, as you'll see when you come to it. But making the dome can be quite an issue, because what we're going to do is we're going to make that shape, but then we've got to, well, you'll see, we're going to have to do some fancy manipulation. Let's just center and align that. Some fancy manipulation to get it to sit on top of the saddle tank correctly. I'm going to hide the boiler, I'm going to hide the saddle tank, and now we're going to look at the dome. And the dome on a steam locomotive is a fancy bit of metal work. The old tin bashers or whatever they were who made these really had some skill, because it's this curve here which is going to prove quite challenging for us. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the lathe tool on this. So I'm going to make a spline that follows this shape, and the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to come up here to our splines. I'm going to use the line function, and I go more or less where the middle of, where I can judge by eye that the middle of the dome is, and I'll click once and then come down to here, because that is going to be a standard curve, and then that's a straight line. So I'm going to come down here, and then I'm going to come out to where that curve is, and then I'm going to go to the middle of that curve, and I right click to end it. And let's have a look. So there it is in wireframe. Well, already I can see there's some problems with it. And because it's just a line, we've already got vertex and spline and the rest of it. So that there is at, let's check here, 19041. So that's where we want that one to be, 19041. 19041. Okay, let's just have another look if it's going to be okay. Yes, I think it will. And make that wireframe. And now I'm going to save this, because this at this point, and save as version of the second copy. At this point I found that Gmax can just collapse on itself. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to make that a Bezier corner, and then I'm going to chance it and select all of these, make sure I'm on top of one of them, make it a Bezier corner, and this one also to be a Bezier corner. You can select the whole line all in one go like that, but I've had it do all sorts of silly things with me when I've done that. Bezier corner gives you independent handles to manipulate. So let's go up, start bending this into something like the shape it should be. Now of course, if you want to be super super clever with all this, that one's probably a little bit too high. And over to X. Isn't that annoying? Yeah. If you want to be super clever with this, what you can do is just knock up a, I tend to use a cylinder, just knock up a cylinder of about the correct width and move that into position. See if you're just about right. Not a very good cylinder, is it? Let's try a circle. I thought I always use a cylinder. Where are we? Circle. Maybe it's a circle here. And then just drop it down. I'm just using this as a guide. Let's see now, is that actually a circle? Have a look here. See, that's not actually a circle, that's not actually a hemisphere there. It's flattened on the top because that's a circle. So half of that would be the hemisphere. And if I was to, let's make it a little bit bigger, just to make sure I just haven't chosen too small a radius there. I don't think I have. You get to know these. And it's sometimes, make sure you don't select the that's maybe more accurate actually. Okay, let's go with the circle. Why make life difficult? So that I can't see. So let's try and make that into a colour that I can see. That isn't particularly visible, is it? So I'm going to change that as well to a slightly different colour. And what we do is we take this circle, we convert it into a spline, and we'll take the segments, and the only ones we want are... No, I know why I do this. The reason why I've just realised, the reason why I do this is because when you get to use the lathe feature, then having part of the circle as your line can be a problem. It creates a problem. For some reason it just won't do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the handles on each of the points there to just pull this line into position. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's going to do the trick, I think. Let's see if we can just tidy that a little bit. That's close. That'll do. That'll do nicely. So there we are. So we've got that piece done. Now all we've got to do is come down here and do the same down here. So we're just going to... I tend to switch between wireframe and what's the other one there? Smooth and highlights quite a bit. And we'll pull that down, and we'll pull that one down, and let's have a look. Yeah, that's alright. And this one now, let's check again. So we want that to curve down nicely like that. Okay. So we pull that down a bit, and we pull this one down a bit. We'll bring this down to level, and I think that's pretty good. Let's go to wireframe, line. Okay, let's make sure we're all centered and happy. Now comes the fun of using the lathe tool, which 9 times out of 10 I get wrong. So if you find yourself having all sorts of frustration with using the lathe tool, join the club, and but you get there eventually. So we'll move this out the way. Remember, that's our bit of line, that's representing half of the dome, and what we're going to do is use it like a lathe tool and produce a three-dimensional object out of it. So let's hope this works. Wouldn't it be nice if it did? Lathe, there we are. Well, it sort of works, hasn't it? This one, I think that's the interior. It's given it as an interior. If we flip that, no, it's not that. Maybe it's one of these, a line. I tend to get these all wrong. It's not that one, is it? Is it center? No. Minimal? So let's try flipping the normals. There we are. So that's our dome. It's not too bad. Bit of a line there. I don't think I can actually lose that. There always seems to be that sort of transition between the semicircle hemisphere of the top and the vertical. And if I was to delete that, so just back to that, and then I have a look at the one down here with the vertex. I mean, we're absolutely upright there. What are we're absolutely upright here. There's a little kink in it there, and that might just do the trick. Might be moving. See how that's moving just a little bit. That might be just enough. I don't know if I can get in any closer than that. Maybe see any difference. There's a little bit there, look, and here. Frankly, you can spend all day doing this. So let's have a look and see if we can lathe up our dome. See if I can repeat that. Lathe. And it was minimum. Yeah, you see, and the normals have been flipped. No, I'm not going to lose that. I'll be able to lose that. The material that it's made from might mask it. Okay, let's save it. Spent all that effort doing it. Let's save it and save it as, and scroll down and get the correct one. There it is. Yes, we do want to replace it. Thank you. And unhide all. And there we are. And it's a complete mess. Because what we've got here is the dome is punching into the saddle tank instead of wrapping. There should be this nice smooth wrapping around it. We'll see in a minute. Here we are. That's what we've got. Well, we've got a whole load of faces there that we don't need. This is the curve that we want, and all of these faces here we don't need them, so I'm just going to convert that to an editable poly, and I'm going to select polygons. I'm going to select all the ones that we don't want. Yes, here we are. And now we have the fun of getting this set onto our saddle tank. And the first thing is that this is too low, this curve is too low. It needs to go up higher, so we'll select all of those points and lift it up a bit. And then if we look here, you'll see that, I'll just click off those points, you'll see here that the skirt, I suppose, along with the flange of the dome here and here touches the saddle tank, but elsewhere it doesn't. It's sticking over. We've got a gap there and there. So what we do, well, this is the way I do it anyway, is to go back into edit it, vertex, and I'm going to leave those two okay, but I'm going to pick up all of those, but I'm going to put back, I'm going to deselect those ones in the middle because I don't want to change them. And here with these selected, I'm going to extend those in one direction only, which is vertical, if I said it right, and I'm going to spread the whole thing out and then move it down a bit until I've got a little bit there of movement down. Spread it out just a tad more. And now move it down a bit until the flange, as it were, is onto the, for these points here, is okay. And then I'm going to deselect these, and I'm going to spread the rest, the remainder. I'll just do this by trial and error. Hopefully it's going to be not a trial and no errors. And so those and those are okay, so I'm going to now deselect those and then increase those, and you can see that there's a widening out there. And then the final ones, this may not be the last time I fiddle about with this, because if I don't like the look of it, then I'll go back and make further alterations. And now I'm just extending that was too much, so we'll go back and back and just extend it just a little bit. I want to get a small drop down there. So when I move that down, There we are. Let's have a look at that, see how ghastly it is. Well, it's not bad at all. Once we get the material on it, it'll blend in quite nicely. And what that means is that that flange is now running right the way round the saddle tank. So that gives you an idea. That's one of the most complicated shapes you have to do. The chimney as well can also be quite complicated. But I think that's enough for this video. So I'm going to end it there. Just going to save this, of course, and there we are. Save it. Yes, please. Twinkly, twinkly. And so there we are. So that's the end of my video. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and please put a comment if you wish to do so. Subscription, by the way, is absolutely free. There's no obligation. I'm not going to harass you with emails or comments or anything like that. It's just to really give me feedback on that there are people actually out there watching this and find it of some interest. If you like it, give me a thumbs up, and watch out for the next one, where I'll start adding some other items to our Bay of Peacock 260 saddle tank. Better know what it is, don't I? 260 ST from the B&LR narrow gauge railway in Ireland. Yo.